Today on 90 Feet Away, we have an ex-Division I baseball player, an ex-Indie Ball overseas professional baseball player, a mental health advocate, and my son, Brett Holtz. Definitely don't want to miss this one. Welcome back to 90 Feet Away. Today I am joined by ex-Division I baseball player, ex-Indie Pro Ball player, mental health advocate, and my youngest child, Brett Holtz. Brett, thanks for being here with us today.
Happy to be here, Pop. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I know you've been waiting for this for a while. You never got the call, but here we are. And I think this is going to be a great episode and really important for people to listen to. I really thought about a lot what I wanted and how I wanted to start out with you. Being the youngest of my three kids, I think I was an easier role model coach when it came to you. But I remember having incredibly difficult conversations probably later on. I'm talking like 15, 16, where driving home one day, I apologized to you for screwing you a bit. I don't know if you remember the conversation. For the audience, in fall ball, which is kind of more low-key, what I would do is the guy that got to the field first, I would let them make the lineup, and anyone that made the lineup would put Brett either second, third, or fourth. I always put Brett 7, 8, 9, and I think a lot of that was because you were my son, and I didn't ever want people to think there was any kind of favoritism involved and that you were going to earn everything that you got. But every person that made the lineup that fall, including Coach Ferraro, all put you second, third, fourth. And I remember really driving home with you that day and apologizing to you for having buried you a little bit where maybe you should have been up in the lineup. And for you, it was like kind of no big deal. You know, oh, no, it's fine, Pop. Like you were just kind of happy to be there. What was it like for you playing for, you know, kind of a big personality in your father?
It's a very good question. Well, you started off mentioning something earlier about like being the youngest child of yours, right? And you know, having Jordan and Sydney to kind of, you know, cushion it a bit, right? So I think you definitely mellowed out by the time you got to me, which I'm very thankful for. And I think when it came to the three of us, you dealt with different types of anxiety and performances, right? Like Jordan was always kind of good, but he was in his own head in his own way. Sydney was always nonchalant and came with talent, right? And you know, being the youngest, I saw what they all did. I think I saw the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think when it came to realizing my own personal struggles, when it came to anxiety and performance anxiety in particular, which I know we'll get to, you know, sometimes it kind of just helped me to just go more with the flow, whether I was aware of it at the time or not. And I think, you know, also recognizing that I've always been so grateful and thankful having you as someone that always had my best interest at heart. And, you know, whether it was hitting 7th, 8th, 9th, or 2, 3, 4, the one thing you've always prided, I think, yourself on is not blowing smoke up anyone, right? And you wanted to show that to other parents and for current, you know, Fury parents now, right? Like just because it's my own kid, right? No nepotism here. If he's going to be there 2, 3, 4, he's going to earn it. And I think that's just something that you instilled in me, from a very early age. And I think it's helped me as I've understood things like humility and what it means to work towards something and nothing's really ever given to you, right? As I've gotten older and seen it in other experiences in my life.
As a third kid, did you feel more pressure because Jordan was a college baseball player and Sydney was a college softball player? Did you feel pressure?
Yes, definitely pressure, but
self-imposed?
Self-imposed for sure. And I think part of it, and this is something too, I think for any father, son, mother, daughter, you know, duo out there, right, baseball or softball, when you have a very involved parent, right, it's whether it's conscious or not, there always is this level of I don't want to disappoint, right? And I think being the third child after having Jordan go to Bucknell and play there, Sydney go to NYU and play there, there was this pressure in a sense of like, I really have to show up, right? I really have to complete the trifecta that is the Holtz children and really kind of end it all with a bang. And, I'm very fortunate, right? I was able to go to a pretty high academic school and compete there for a few years. But I think it was pressure in that sense, but really pressure more in the sense of like, I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to disappoint my dad.
Which is really interesting because I know for a fact I never put that type of pressure on you, like ever. Mommy may have put some academic pressure on you guys, but you guys were, really self-sufficient when it came to academics. I remember, Sydney saying something like she might have been in like fourth grade, and Jordan got into like middle school honor roll, and she goes, "Oh my God, like if he could get into that, I'm going to be high honor roll."
Yeah.
It was just kind of who she was and then who you were. But I think for me, my goal always, and the message was loudest and clearest, that I really didn't care what you guys did. Mm-hmm. I just wanted you to be the best at it. I wanted you to work hard in anything that you guys wanted to be good at. My question, I think my first question for you, because I have an opinion on this, but
sure.
My first question for you looking back on your childhood is, when did you feel, or when do you first remember some sort of performance anxiety?
Well, I think you already know the answer to this, but when I was about 9 or 10 years old, we had a local football team starting up right through Valhalla. It's called the Junior Vikings, and I've always been playing baseball really up until that point, 8, 9, 10 years old. I wanted to try out for a little bit. I know my father again played football, so I figured might as well give it a shot. And for those, again, it was 2 years and you're 9, 10 years old, right? So what does it mean to be good? But, I think I showed some potential, right, with football. And I was really good at tackling people, and I was a decent runner at the time, which is really funny because I'm just not known for my running now. But, it was around that time where I was like, a lot of people are expecting things from me, and it felt weird. I just, for whatever reason, I just didn't know how to process it. And I think that was part of it, right, where most of the pressure is self-imposed, and I think just for whatever reason at 9, 10 years old, there was this persona being built up of like, Brett Holtz, the water boy, and all these different things where
Adam Sandler reference there for the people that don't know, because Brett literally wouldn't come off the field. He would play offense, defense, special teams. Yeah. He would tackle everybody and would refuse to be tackled, and it was the funniest thing to watch. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, and I think it was a joy for you in a sense, right? Like, seeing your son out there and doing well. And I think the more I'm thinking about this as I'm speaking to you, right, I think back then, and in similar in ways with baseball at times too, where it could be, there's this pressure of, okay, I've done such a great job of building up this persona of myself that people will perceive me as this great football player, great baseball player. But then there's sometimes this weird disconnect of, what if? Like, what happens if I go 0 for 4 today? What happens if, I suck today on the football field, right? Then what? And, I think ultimately I don't have any regrets in my life, right? I don't regret kind of deciding the football wasn't for me and really, putting my heads down with baseball. But there is that what if of like, what if I bet on myself more, right? What if I just kind of leaned more into that and had more confidence in myself rather than, feeling good enough, like, oh, people think this about me. But, so it was more along those lines of, wishing I kind of just could have believed in myself a little bit more at that time, because who knows what could have happened with football.
See, it's really interesting. Yeah, well, that is true, but it's really interesting because it was about the same age that I recognized it in you. Jordan owned the pitcher's mound. Mm-hmm. And for people that don't know this, Jordan is Brett's height, about 6'3", now, but a right-handed pitcher, and Brett is lefty. So being Jordan's little brother, people couldn't understand why I didn't make you a pitcher. And it was because of the anxiety that I saw on the mound at 9 and 10.
Yeah, that too.
That you lived and died with every pitch. Yeah. A good pitch, you were like, yes. And a bad pitch, like, shoulder slump. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that wasn't the right place for you.
Yeah.
For your headspace, right? Like, it just wasn't the right thing.
Pitching
so
100%.
So I shut that down,
yes.
Pretty quickly, which, again, was tough because being a lefty, right? Like, you're either a first baseman or an outfielder.
Yeah, certainly pigeonholed.
Right? So you're pigeonholed a little bit more than other baseball players. But you go on to have an incredible teenage career. I remember in high school you were 9 that shine, one of the best 9 in the Westchester and the Hudson Valley. I remember watching baseball games where your high school coach couldn't even bat you third or fourth because it was like you were being intentionally walked every time. So it got to a point where he was batting you first because you'd get at least one at bat a game without them trying to get you out. And every level of baseball that I kind of pushed you towards, I felt like you did well.
Yeah.
You weren't great. You weren't terrible. You always did well. You competed. That's all I asked for. You competed. Whether we went to Georgia and you faced that kid throwing 94, right? I think you were 1 for 2 off of him, but you got your swings in against this kid and barreled him up 2 times, right? You weren't going to be intimidated by that stuff. We do the whole recruiting route. You were a different kid. Like, we knew you were high academic for sure. Didn't realize at the time you would end up Ivy, but you know there was interest there for sure. I remember we went to a UVA camp. You did really well at that camp. Hit a ball off the wall. Actually got a triple for a guy who doesn't run well. You got a triple down at UVA.
Yep.
And there was some interest from a bunch of schools, but driving home that 6 hours from Virginia, you kind of looked at me and said, Dad, you know, Columbia wants me. There's nothing for me to think about, right? It's like high-level baseball with the best academic situation I could ask for. Right. And thankfully, that's where you ended up. Now, for me, that's where a lot of the negative – nothing negative towards Columbia baseball at all. Nothing but respect for the program, the coaches. But for you personally, I think that's where you started to take kind of a deep dive into questioning who you were, your ability, do I belong here? And because of that stuff, it wasn't Brett, the baseball player that I knew, wasn't transferring onto the field. You second-guessed everything you did. Talk to me about that, bud.
Yeah. You know, it's funny when you don't think about it for some time, you're forced to, right? It kind of brings back all those emotions, like flooding it back in. But I've explained to a lot of people, right, the idea of, like, you know, it feels like a freshman year, right? Like every day, freshman year just felt like a new thing was being sprung on me, right? And you know, going to a school like Columbia, right? And again, we come from an affluent area. We're not a rich family. We're not a poor family, right? You and Mom have done a great job of making us feel like we've never had to struggle for anything, right? But you're getting a mix of so much at a school like Columbia, whether it's just from the demographic of students there, right? And you know, on top of that, yes, it's lower level Division I, but it's Division I baseball. And you know, again, where the program's gone since I've been there, right? Like they're well ahead, you know, more D1 schools, but it was just almost like drinking water out of a fire hose at times. And just, again, just the way that I interpreted the stress, the way I interpreted it, or just really felt and grappled with it. The academics, like not, you know, believing in myself at first and not really thinking I could hack it there. It just felt like from academics, socially, baseball-wise, just overall, I'm like, am I in the right spot? You know, like, again, in theory, it's great. You know, you want to go to an Ivy League school, blah, blah, blah. But then it's really like, do I deserve to be here? And it's intimidating. You know, you're around some of the smartest people in the world, right? And it's just like, am I one of these people? Okay. Like, you know, so whether I've been forced into it or not, you know, like there is this sense of like, you kind of have to fake it till you make it, but there's sometimes you feel like you're really, really faking it. And I think when I really reflect back on my freshman year, there were times I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. But again, similar to what I shared before, right? I'm just kind of here for the ride. And I think when that may not be the best mentality to take at times, you know, I think that's like sometimes the only coping mechanism that there is, right? Like the more I'm going to think about something, sometimes it's not going to do you any more good. So I just like, you know what? Kind of like hands off. Let's just see what kind of happens, right?
But the game that you love so much what got tough for you? At that point, what I tell all the kids that I coach is the only thing that changes is the speed of the game, right? I remember you being frustrated with signs. There's a million signs, right? There's a million signs. And there's a million offenses and defenses and different things. And for an incredibly bright kid, you were struggling to remember some of that stuff.
That's right. That's right. I think – sorry to cut you off. No. Like, again, the more I'm thinking about that time, right, it was just more like I wasn't trying to be the superstar on the team. I just wanted to show people that I could – I belong there. I belong there, correct. And there were certain moments and certain things we do, whether it was more in practice settings, in the gym, in actual inter squads or games, right? Like I just felt like more often than not, I was pressing. I was white-knuckling it a lot more, which really ended up hindering my overall performance because it really wasn't until the advice I got from Dan Tischler, hopefully you're watching this, but we were in Nebraska. It was our junior year, like right before COVID hit, like right before the season ended. He's like, I want you to try to play more loose, play a little bit more like some of the Dominican kids you played with growing up, right? And it was just that idea of like, how can I just really embody this mindset of being a lot more looser when I'm playing? And just, again, this is a game. And for so long, it felt like, going back to what we were saying, right? The pressures I put on myself, the pressures that maybe were external, but really, again, I interpreted them, made them internal for myself. It just did not feel fun for a very long time.
But that's such a great message to the audience because sometimes we forget it's a game, okay? We forget all the fun we had doing this growing up and everything it took. Like enjoy the journey. It's not about the destination, right? It's about the journey. And you went from loving everything about it to second-guessing yourself so badly that you started really not to enjoy it at all.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were dreading.
Again, it wasn't I say, for lack of better words, probably dreading, and again, this is something, too, that I experienced even back in high school, right? Going back on that point of, I built this persona up of people already, right? I don't want to potentially, tear that down, right? So there were times even in high school, I don't even know if I ever shared this with you, I was hoping we'd get rainouts, right? I was hoping, like, you know what? The season was truncated by 4 or 5 games, just to kind of not give people potentially a shot. Like, he's not that good, right? Like, look, whatever. At Columbia, when you're going into a program like that, right, and as a freshman, you just want to be accepted. You're seeing things like, okay, this guy got drafted last year, or this guy has a chance to go, in the draft this year, right? And I kind of noticed very early on, whether it was just, again, by how I was doing or just how things just turned out, I probably wasn't really going down that path of like Major League Baseball, right, or minor league affiliated baseball. And I wouldn't say it was like a revelation, but for lack of better words, it was like a revelation for me in the sense of like, what if there is a way for me to try to enjoy this a little bit more now, knowing that whether it was my doing or not, there's less pressure or should be less pressure. Again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, of just like not wanting to let you down. I think there were definitely moments throughout my Columbia baseball experience where I don't know if you felt disappointment toward me, but I think there were times where I think you probably would have liked to see more fire under me when it came to fighting for playing time, fighting for certain things, where I think in that, along those lines, it was more like, no, wait, I think this is just, I'm understanding how things kind of are working now.
Only, I think, because I knew what you were capable of, and I wasn't sure that you understood what you were capable of.
Yeah.
You can't teach the swing that you have, and I needed you to believe in it. I'm going to share something with you right now, which is kind of bizarre that I've never told you this. So I'm saying it publicly for the first time. I kind of got, I don't want to say tired of, but I felt badly in kind of getting on you, or not getting on you, questioning, are you okay? How do you feel? How was practice? How was the inter-squad game?
Yeah.
So if you go back in timeline, I am now known by thousands of people for posting motivational stuff every morning. I wake up just about every morning, and I post something before most people wake up. That started for you. Because I knew that you'd see everything that I'd put up, but I was hoping that some of those things would get to you indirectly without me having to say it to you.
Yeah, that means a lot.
And if you go back on my timeline and see when I first started doing it, I guarantee you it will coincide with when you were struggling.
Yeah, no.
And that's truly when I started doing it, and then obviously it's kind of turned into its own thing.
Right.
You know, here we are 7, 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years later.
Yeah.
And that was like the most important thing for me was for you to believe the way I believed in you. I was never disappointed. So I don't ever want you to use that term. I've never been disappointed. I never wanted you to give up and be satisfied with not being your your best, 100%. Right?
No,
so beyond this, we go to it's your time now. Mm-hmm. You're a junior at Columbia, and it's your time.
Yeah.
And then we fucking hit with COVID. And the Ivy League, first conference in the country, they decide there's going to be no season. And that was devastating, right?
Yeah.
Everything you worked for, including the first 2 years of Columbia, and now that's taken away from you.
Right.
And fast forward to the following year, and it's now 2021, which should be your senior year, hanging out with your friends, your roommates, all your guys, and you're virtual again. Most of the other conferences in the country tried to have a simulated season. The Ivy shut it down immediately, and your college career comes to an end.
Yeah.
So at the time, I think you were probably, I don't want to use the term mad at me, but I don't know how much of a choice I gave you that you were going overseas to go play professional baseball.
Yeah.
You had never been overseas without me or mommy. And as a 21-year-old kid, I was sending you to the Czech Republic where literally you knew nobody. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even like sexy, like you're going to be in Prague, right? And I'm going to have this unbelievable.
Which I didn't know.
Right, which you didn't know. Brett ends up in this town, beautiful town, but it's called Ostrava, which is 3 hours north by train from Prague and 20 minutes from the Poland border.
I'll pause you there. You're messing up the geography a bit. So long story short, fly into Prague, right? I get picked up by Boris, my coach. Shout out, Boris. I'm like, I'm so excited to be here. But I'm like, okay, great. Let's get in the car. You ready for the drive? I go, what do you mean drive? It's 5 hours east. So after about, again, this is during COVID. This is like 2021. First time flying by myself abroad like this, right? So it's a big deal for a lot of different reasons. Like 6-7 hour flight to Amsterdam. I think I had like a 9-hour layover in Amsterdam.
To save money. The 9-hour layover to save money. Go ahead.
It's nuts. So then it's like an hour flight to Prague, and then we're like, all right, thank God I'm here, finally. And then we get hit with like a 5-hour drive home. A 5-hour drive east all the way to Ostrava, which, to your point, correct. It is about 20 minutes
from Poland?
Yeah, from Poland.
South of the Poland border.
Yeah.
You were lucky. Like, a third of your team spoke pretty good English.
Yeah.
A third of your team spoke broken English.
Yeah.
And a third of your team spoke no English.
Correct.
What did my father do to me? Holy shit, where did daddy send me, right? In retrospect, could possibly be the best thing that I ever made you do.
100%. I would say that hands down.
Why?
Well, to your point, right? Like COVID was up a lot of things for a lot of people, right? And I think when it first happened, we were still kind of like teetering around with like a season my junior year, right? We didn't know how serious it was. Like we thought it was cool to have online classes and still be there on campus, but no one really understood the severity of what it was, right? I know my roommate Tim Post, hopefully he's watching this. I remember he tweeted something about about how the Ivy League mishandled it. And then, again, we saw how really bad COVID got. So, like, eventually people were really giving him a tough time on Twitter. Like, yeah, this aged well, like, ha. But it was just a lot of those emotions, right? Like, understanding, like, the world just stopped. I was a senior in college, right? Recently left.
Your life was taken from you.
Oh, yeah, no, my life was essentially taken from me, right? So, again, was about to get a job I didn't really want to take. I was getting out of a relationship at the time, right? It was just like a really, like, weird time in my life for a lot of different reasons.
Did you wrong?
And baseball, yeah, kind of shoved it up
everything you had worked for, this opportunity to finally play at Columbia, was all taken away from you.
Right, because the way that I've understood it, I think some of my teammates would probably, corroborate this, is that, I was hopefully going to be one of those guys more off the bench, whether it's like a pinch hit or like a DH guy, right, for the team. So that was really tough pill to swallow and understand that, like, you know what, I have about maybe 20 to 25 college at-bats to my name and career, and that'll be it, right? And I think at the time you were on this really, really great trajectory and path with Israel baseball, and you were making a lot of great connections with people overseas and competition-wise, right? So you got hooked up with some people from the Czech Republic, and I don't really remember how it happened. I just remember it happening almost like over text. You were like,
well, you were like, Brett, do you want to? It was through my buddy Richard, who lives in the Czech, and I asked Richard to do this because my hope was that you would fall back in love with baseball.
That's exactly what happened.
I couldn't let you end your career that way. And it might not have happened that way, but it did happen that way, right?
Correct.
You found that love for just playing the game again, meeting new people, new teammates, great teammates, and then meeting other guys like you that were from different countries trying to make it through independent foreign baseball. I'm not going to brag, but you go from not playing at Columbia, I say you hit 400, you hit 398 for the season.
Yeah.
You won a championship. Mm-hmm. How much better could it have gotten for a guy that didn't get an opportunity to play? I remember saying to you, man, go back. Go to Australia. Like, Mommy and I, we'll support you for a couple. Like baseball owes it to you. And you literally said to me, you know what, Pop? I'm good. I'm really good. And having you fall back in love with the game was one of the happiest things for me, because then you go on to, Brett is now playing for the Israel national team and got a chance to go back to the Czech Republic to play for the national team against ex-professionals like Didi Gregorius 2 Septembers ago, and hopefully you're going to go back this coming September. Beyond baseball and what baseball stole from you, and then finding your way back to loving it. Woke or born a person in you who is now incredibly passionate about the mental health process, helping other athletes, not just baseball, helping the next generation go through and overcome things that you went through. Walk us through that, man. I'm gonna back away now.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot there. I want to go back and touch on some of like the Czech Republic experience and just that whole entire summer, right? I refer to that summer a lot as like my Eat, Pray, Love summer, right? And it's a book, movie, whatever it may be, but just learning really how to fall back in love with the game that you instilled in me from such an early age that I feel like I got away from for some time. To your point, did really well there performance-wise, right? We won a championship, caught the last out, of the championship, just stuff I'll never forget. Another really great memory, right? Going back to back during the European Baseball Cup was really like just a great time there. But, again, I've always been someone who's been more in touch with mental health and psychology, or I think, just throughout my life, right? I noticed this more throughout middle school and high school, even going back that far. A lot of my friends be like, Brett, you'd be a great therapist someday. Like you just, you're good at listening. You make it a point to listen and extend, a helping hand, listening ear, whatever it may be. that led into like what I eventually ended up studying at Columbia, right? And pursuing psychology, at least from the undergraduate sense, and was going to figure it out from there afterwards, right? But then COVID and everything, right? So we already kind of discussed earlier, right? Some of the things I was personally going through right before the Czech Republic experience happened. But in the back of my mind when I was out there, right, I just always made it more of a point to really engage in the conversations with people out there and understand from a cultural standpoint how we differ. What similarities do we share when it comes to mental health struggles, right? And the one thing about that summer for me that I know is just because, again, being from, I guess, the U.S. and just, the culture and that comes with just working hard, nose to the ground, but it's so different out there and relaxed out there. And I think with that, there also sometimes comes a sense of like, it's not a whole lot going on. I think there's almost too much time on people's hands where they feel like, they're overthinking things or just like I said, just not a whole lot going on. So when it comes to purpose and finding meaning and passion for life, I spoke with a lot of my teammates even out there and guys I played against out there that really struggled with that. And I know I'm not the first person to ever come up with this idea of like, I want to do this to help people, figure out their passion or just figure out like their purpose in life. But this kind of like lit another fire under my ass in terms of like, this isn't just happening in Westchester County or in New York State or within my community of people. This is like an international, epidemic, if you will, of just actual mental health issues, but then things like that, just like everyday struggles that people go through, but feel like they can't make it a point to talk about because it's just like they're scared to, or it's like I should be able to handle these things, and they just don't. And I've always prided myself on being an advocate, right? Being someone that people can come to, and I'll be open. I'm pretty open with my stuff and story as is, So just being a beacon for some people at some point in time is what it's about for me.
But you were young. You were very young at 21 to be that forthright to want to speak to people who don't even know you. I mean, they barely met you, but they felt comfortable with you. You became part of some of these guys, truly like part of their families. Like
I'm Uncle Brett to Peter's kids.
Within a 5-6 month spread that you were there, which is unbelievable. But I've seen it now with my own eyes, right? You're playing in men's baseball leagues to stay fresh for the European Championship.
Sure.
And I will see you not only talking to guys on your team, you're helping guys on the other team in the middle of the game with the process, with like –
Look, sorry, not to cut you off.
But you're 25. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not 45. You're 25.
I feel like an old soul. Yeah.
You are an old soul. Mommy and I always called you that. But, like, who does that?
Yeah. I guess like a way to think about it, Pop, is, again, I'm getting older, right? I know there's even some twang that I don't even know of that like 19, 20, 21-year-olds are using nowadays, right? But, it may be different hearing it from a Joe Mandile versus a Brett Holtz, right? And while I'm still at this age, while I'm still at the current capacity that I'm at, right, I just feel like it can land a lot more with kids that I see going through it, right, that are not maybe even struggling with the game, but just trying to navigate the game and their path within it. And it's just, it goes a lot further, I think.
I think it goes a lot further. I think it was bad, but then add COVID in. I think COVID ruined a lot of young people, right? Boys and girls, and not just in athletics. I mean, in studying, in education,
social development,
social development, not being able to hang out with my friends, and even after COVID, right? Listen, there are some great things about technology, but after COVID, what do? We're on social media. Right, and not just one. We go from X to Insta to Snapchat to Facebook and that's how I'm spending my time. And some people could get more depressed looking at that stuff because everybody on there puts their best days of their lives on there, right? Nobody's honest on Facebook. It's all bullshit. It's horseshit.
Right.
Everybody's showing look at this, look at me. Nobody's showing like the true stuff that they go through. So all these kids are seeing that in addition to everything else, which is why for me at 25, I think it's so awesome that this is something you're so incredibly passionate about, something you really want to do
thank
going
you.
forward. Tell the audience what you're doing now, right? It started from literally just reading and helping and getting involved to you're actually involved pretty heavily with the hat you're wearing, Men's Mental, right? Yep. And tell us about Men's Mental. Tell us about Ted. Tell us what you're doing.
No, thank you. So Men's Mental was an organization I came across, actually. I saw a bunch of Columbia basketball players reposting it, probably around the time of COVID or maybe a little bit beforehand. So I'm like, this seems interesting. Going to, follow, reach out, support, whatever it may be. And, I think it just came one day. I was like, you know what, F this. I'm going to just DM, see what kind of happens, and go from there. And Teddy.
And when was that?
This is probably.
You were in college.
Oh, yeah, must have been in college.
Years ago.
Yeah, this is maybe like 2019 at the earliest, maybe 2020, 2021.
Okay.
But around that time frame. And yeah, Teddy Sorlis, he's someone who's become very special in my life. He is a two-time he attempted suicide twice. And prior to that, he would consider himself, he was a basketball player through and through. I'd say he had a similar experience with his father from a basketball standpoint, and his dad being a very big presence in his community there in New Jersey. And I'm sure already dealt with similar pressures, right? Just like performance and anxiety around that. But eventually he ended up playing at Babson College. I think once he kind of got there, the way I understand it was he was hit with back-to-back labrum surgeries, and it was just a very, very tough thing for him to cope with. And I think that's where, he made the decision to attempt suicide. And I know he also has buddies that did commit suicide and went through with it. And I remember hearing his story for the first time and being so moved by it, right? But not just from the story itself, but also from the fact that here is a young man, someone younger. He's a year younger than me, right? He's 24, and he's now 25. But someone being so willing and open about his situation. I just remember back then, I'm like, this is someone I just have to at least let him know that I hear him and I support him. But then it became a whole other thing of like, hey, how can I help you now? How can I get involved? And what really started out as just kind of more like friends texting and like being support systems. It became like, hey, like what's going on with Men's Mental? Like, what are you really doing there? And I'm really proud to say now, I've been technically associated with Men's Mental for almost 2 years, a little bit over 2 years. And I just got appointed into the COO position, right? So Chief Operating Officer, where it's really Teddy and I spearheading this whole movement. And, where I really come into the forefront, which is kind of, again, using some of my skills from my main job and other things, right? Just helping with these strategic partnerships, right? Like going beyond just the social media presence, how can we actually get resources in the hands of some of these kids? And whether it's male or female, that's really what I want to help out with. And I've been very, it's kind of nice to boast a bit about it, but I've helped formulate a few partnerships with some really, really great companies that do just that. So,
and what is your and Teddy's vision for Men's Mental? Like walk me through some of what you're doing now to help kids, and what are your goals 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's
where do you see the company?
It's great. What we've made it a point to do right now, again, a lot of it's just been social media up until this point. I'd say really up until 2024, where this past year we've had the most in-person events we've had in org history, if you will. So we've done some events at Johns Hopkins with their community outreach. We've done some actual events with like Duquesne University, UNC Asheville, where Teddy's gone and addressed the whole room of student athletes and shared his story, but also facilitated almost like this panel, like locker room talk like session, group therapy like session, just to really help, again, start destigmatizing the conversations that men really should be having about, these types of concerns and mental health issues. So that's really something that we've invested more energy and effort into this past year. We're looking to continue building on that. But like I said, too, like those partnerships that I helped form with companies, MindFlow, The Zone, right? These are tangible resources that both, athletic directors, but even students themselves could take it upon themselves, student athletes, could take it upon themselves to sign up for, and you could immediately start to get connected with, some kind of support, whether it's a mental performance coach, whether it's an actual licensed therapist or not, but just to give people actual resources to, chew on. That's really what it's about.
So years ago, nobody had mental health as part of their organization. And I'm going to use sports to start. Today, everybody does. And at every level, right? So baseball, every level. There's a mental health coach that is overseen by the head within the organization. Companies more and more are starting to, and I know you're involved with that as well, is starting to add to their benefit structure.
Yeah.
Do you find more colleges, universities, high schools, do they offer mental health help for their and I'm not just talking about athletes here, students as well. I mean, because it's real.
Yeah, 100%. I think out of all the schools that I've ever talked with, you always hear more support for the students themselves and like actual like faculty and staff. But again, it's a matter of like usage, right? Are people actually going and engaging there? It's one thing to actually offer it, but then are people actually leveraging it, right? And I think that's always still the concern when you're in a high school setting, right? And I don't want to see Brett go into like, Mr. Kupek's office, right? Like there's always still that stigma around it.
But in 2005, I definitely know there was a stigma behind it. I know there was.
Yeah.
In 2025, is there really still that type of stigma? Because every athlete and professional athletes, as part of their team, they have a mental health coach.
Yeah.
Right? They have to. And I don't care what sport they're playing.
Yeah.
They have mental health as part of whether it's meditation, yoga. They're all doing something.
Right.
Is there still a stigma attached today?
I'd say there's still a stigma, but certainly less destigmatized, which is great. Like there's definitely still more work to do. And again, from the scope of work that I'm doing, right, I see it from the HR, business, employer side, as well as now with the work I'm doing with men's mental on the academic, student athlete side of things. It's definitely getting more widely accepted, but there's still that issue of, yes, it's accepted. How are people now actually using and continuing to use said resources? How is it now impacting them on a daily basis?
Interesting. And what do you do for a living right now?
I work for this amazing company called Modern Health. We essentially partner with employers around the world, right, to offer a whole mental health and wellness solution, right? So they could get immediate access to our provider network, which we vet out and sort out, and again, culturally centered, right? So say you are Apple based here in the U.S., but you have a company that is, you have satellite offices in India or Japan or whatever it may be, you could still get the same quality and the same turnaround time when it comes to getting connected with an actual therapist.
So if I am going
coach.
through it today, through your company and how they set up their benefits,
sure,
I don't have to wait 6 weeks to see a therapist.
Correct.
Tell me how that works.
That's right. So again, companies like mine, what we do is we contract essentially with providers all around the world. They could be doctors, they could be just ICF certified, coaches, right? All different, a wide array in terms of subclinical, clinical need that they're able to satisfy. We have a whole team that goes out and again, just like, hey, we would love for you to be a part of our provider network, right? You give us X amount of hours toward your overall business throughout the week, right? And that's kind of how it works, right? So this is like worldwide, right? So we have a ton of providers obviously here in the U.S., but it's like over 200 countries we have providers based in, and a lot of it's really based on the need of our employers.
But if I'm going through something right now, how quick can you get me in to see somebody?
Oh, sorry. Yes. I mean, within the platform, right, you could get hooked up with someone as early as today, right? It just depends on availability.
Which is amazing, right? Like to be able to help somebody go back to Ted. Yeah. If Ted had some of those resources available to him when he was going through his stuff, right?
Like, and what's so beautiful about it too is like there's still some HR involvement, right? But it's very, the company will purchase, the platform and purchase the technology, but after that, it's really just, hey, we offer this benefit try to use it. And then there's no interference from anyone. Like there's none of that, like, I have to go speak with Betty in HR about what I'm going through, right? Because it is just such a fragile thing that you have to really account for. And I think that's what a company like mine does an incredible job of, is being able to provide that level of
I'm going to take a 180-degree turn right now.
Let's do it.
And I'm going to talk about your girlfriend.
Uh-oh.
I love what she's doing. Tell the audience what she's doing.
Yeah, Hannah Young is just an incredible human being. She is currently getting her doctorate in clinical psychology at Palo Alto University, which is essentially Stanford. Yeah.
And clinical psychology, because, again, a passion to help people.
Yeah.
Right? So between the two of you, other than mental health, what do you talk about?
Oh, God. Yeah. I
mean, what,
no, I mean,
are you talking about her caseload? Like what?
No, I mean, that's certainly a part of it, right? You know, it's really just complaining about each other's days, you know, but no, I mean, I love her to death. She is incredible. We, you know, again, we talk about obviously mental health and how important that is, you know, for us and our lives.
Trying to fix the world.
Yeah, to Kuna Alum a little bit, right? You know, I think we're going about it in our own ways. She is way more clinical than I ever will be, nor would I want to be, right? She's working with the people that really need it, you know, really, really need it. Like, can't function normally without, you know, some level of support, right? Where I'm looking to take more of the route where it's more, you know, again, from the performance side, right? Like working with hopefully some of the kids in here, right? Where they're okay, you know, but they could certainly benefit from having that, you know, added support.
So down the road, we could see you doing some stuff here at Game On 13.
I think you could at some point. We'll see. We'll see. You know, life is a highway, you know, but yeah, that's certainly the plan at some point in time. But just really enjoying everything that I have going on right now and being within this space. And, you know, again, who knows, maybe Hannah and I could go into business together somehow, some way, other than, you know, domestic partnership.
And not to take a sidetrack here, Brett mentioned something he wasn't mumbling. In Hebrew, the word tikkun olam means to heal the world. I actually have that tattooed on me.
I will be getting it tattooed on me. So
and to heal the world. I mean, that's what our jobs are. Our jobs are to leave the world better than it was when you got it. And I tell you that I think you're doing a great job at it. You're doing an outstanding job at being my son. I couldn't be happier or more proud of you. And, you know, I look forward to watching this. Although it's not something I grew up with, I am absolutely interested in what you do and what you continue to do. And thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Pa. You know, I think the last thing I will say, and it's funny, I think maybe Jordan or Sydney could, you know, probably share a very similar sentiment. You know, what's been funny for me is being able to see you understand and be more open to mental wellness, mental fitness, right? And I think there was a point in time where, you know, I don't want to call you out in front of your, you know, your viewers here, but right, you didn't really understand it. You didn't get it. And I think, you know, what makes it even funnier for me is that you have been a therapist for so many people, their kids, right? Helping the parents navigate how to, you know, deal with their kid, you know, at 9 years old, 10 years old, 13 years old, college, right? And it's been, I think that's been my purpose, you know, in a way, is just always been figuring out how I could continue to, you know, still hang out with Daddy for as long as I can. And you know, that's why I still play baseball. That's why I still want to be here at Game On as much as I can. And I think that's ultimately why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I've seen you do it, you know, and this is just the way I'm going about it. But you have been a mental health advocate, whether you've been aware of it or not. And although you may have contributed to my mental health at times, you know, issues, but again, you've always been a beacon of hope, and you and Mom have been someone I've been so motivated by. And, you know, I think all three of us are doing things similarly because of what you and Mom have done for us. So thank you, and I definitely look forward to the next time we're doing this again.
I appreciate you, and see, my own son has daddy issues. Anyway, thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you next time on 90 Feet Away.